A bunker with an area of less than 370 square meters once bolstered the world's trust in the United States. But now, it is highly likely to become the fuse for the collapse of the imperial hegemony. When the global gold price reaches an all-time high, the doubts about the Fort Knox bullion depository are also growing louder. Is the more than 4,500 tons of gold stored there still in place? Can other countries retrieve the gold they have deposited in the United States? Recently, Trump has carried out a series of outrageous actions, and the national credibility of the United States is on the verge of being ruined by him. This has led many countries, including Germany and the Netherlands, to demand the repatriation of the gold they have stored in the United States one after another. However, there is indeed a question mark over exactly how much gold the United States still has in stock. Previously, Musk posted on a social media platform, casting doubt on the authenticity of the United States gold reserves. He stated that the gold in Fort Knox belongs to the American public, and that we need to know whether the gold is still there and whether it has been stolen. Trump also expressed his support for an audit. In response, the U.S. Treasury Department urgently claimed that the vault undergoes a seal inspection every year and that the gold reserves are intact. It also rejected the requests for opening the vault for inspection and for a re-audit. The Treasury Department's strong resistance to the audit action has further deepened the outside world's suspicions. According to data from the World Gold Council, as of the fourth quarter of 2024, the United States gold reserves amounted to 8,133.46 tons, ranking first in the world. Half of this gold is stored in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Data from the U.S. Treasury Department shows that the amount of gold stored in the Fort Knox bullion depository is approximately 4,572.2 tons. If this amount of gold were to decrease or disappear completely, the United States would be in a great deal of trouble. The Fort Knox bullion depository consists of above-ground and underground parts. The most crucial underground vault has an area of less than 370 square meters. It is entirely surrounded by steel plates over 60 centimeters thick, as well as concrete and granite. It is estimated that even an average missile probably couldn't penetrate it. There are also sentry towers and large minefields outside the building. Moreover, the vault itself is built within a military base, making it almost impossible for anyone to steal the gold. However, then again, the strongest fortresses are often breached from within. Will the Fort Knox bullion depository be an exception? According to the official statement of the United States, the Fort Knox bullion depository is off-limits for visits. However, there have been 3 records of it being open for visits in history. These were when former U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt paid a visit in 1943, when U.S. Congressman entered for inspection in 1974, and when then U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin entered for an inspection in August 2017. During these 3 visits, 2 of them sparked widespread public doubts. After the Fort Knox bullion depository was built, it became famous overseas due to its large storage of gold and its strong security measures. At that time, there were more and more conflicts breaking out around the world, especially in Europe. Therefore, the national treasures and gold of many European countries were also sent to Fort Knox for storage. By 1941, the gold reserves here had reached as much as 20,000 tons, making it the richest place in the world and arousing even more curiosity. Among those who were curious was then U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He wanted to go in and take a look. Normally speaking, Fort Knox is not open to outsiders, but was Roosevelt an outsider? Obviously not. So, in September 1943, Roosevelt got his wish and entered the interior of the bullion depository for a tour. However, there were almost no details or subsequent reports about this visit. By 1974, due to the collapse of the Bretton Woods system and the decoupling of the U.S. dollar from gold, various rumors about the misappropriation of the gold in Fort Knox spread across the United States. The most widely circulated version was that the Rockefeller family manipulated the Federal Reserve Bank to sell the gold in the Fort Knox bullion depository. Some people even claimed to have seen the standard gold ingots in Fort Knox. As public opinion intensified, more and more people came to believe that the bullion depository was empty. This trust crisis also began to spread to the financial market, causing fluctuations in U.S. stocks and the U.S. dollar. Eventually, Fort Knox had no choice but to respond. Mary Brooks, the then director of the United States Mint, led more than 60 people, including several members of Congress, journalists, and photographers, into the Fort Knox bullion depository to check the accounts. Subsequently, a large number of photos were released to the media. However, this operation did not dispel the public's doubts. Instead, it gave rise to new questions. For example, the color of the gold was wrong and its weight was insufficient, and so on. The crux of the matter was that there were indeed some irregularities in these photos. The media reported that the weight of a gold ingot was 27.5 pounds, but the on-site photos showed it was 22 pounds. Moreover, there was no purity test, and the serial numbers were not checked, and so on. Besides, they only inspected less than 6% of the total gold reserves. In addition, the relevant data was classified as confidential. How could such an inspection allay the public's doubts? What's more crucial is that more than 95% of the audit reports went missing in a strange way between 1975 and 1986. Therefore, after that, many members of Congress still demanded that the Fort Knox bullion depository be audited regularly and that the audit reports be submitted to Congress. However, they received no response. In 2017, the Fort Knox bullion depository welcomed a new group of visitors. Then U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin entered for an inspection. Among the accompanying personnel were Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin, Congressman Brett Guthrie, and others. In the statement issued after the visit, it was claimed that everything in the depository appeared to be secure and in good order. However, perhaps out of fear of causing another controversy, the photos shown subsequently were all in black and white. But this kind of operation seemed more like an attempt to cover up some clues. Since then, the conspiracy theory that the bullion depository had been emptied has grown more and more intense. Until this year, when Musk proposed to enter the depository for inspection, this golden castle once again became a hot topic of public discussion. Moreover, the revelation of the corruption inside story of the United States by the Department of Government Efficiency has further deepened the public's concerns. However, the attitude of the U.S. Treasury Department has been very firm. Not only did they reject Musk's request, but also the state attorneys general affiliated with the Democratic Party sued some members of Congress on the grounds of threatening national security. They questioned the motives for the audit, believing that it was a political maneuver by the Trump faction, which might trigger turmoil in the financial market. However, these actions and remarks might be able to deceive the confused public, but the countries that have deposited their gold in the United States are not that easy to be fooled. Germany has repeatedly demanded the repatriation of its gold and has so far successfully retrieved a cumulative total of 300 tons. However, for the remaining gold, the United States has refused to allow its withdrawal on the grounds of maintaining financial security. In fact, it is not surprising that these countries are concerned about the safety of their gold. The various chaotic situations recently exposed within the U.S. government have heightened people's concerns about the security of the gold reserves. The main worry is that someone might steal while in charge of security, and this is by no means a baseless concern. For a gold stronghold like Fort Knox, it is impossible for outsiders to enter easily. Those who can gain access must definitely be insiders. So, if high-ranking officials collude with internal personnel, it is entirely possible to secretly transport the gold out for collateral or trading purposes. Even if the entire bullion depository were to be emptied, people outside would have no way of knowing. Secondly, the United States is a country essentially controlled by capital. The real controllers of the Federal Reserve are several major financial groups. Over the years, through the revolving door between politics and business, they have long since permeated the U.S. government to the extent that it is as full of holes as a sieve. It is quite easy for them to control the management personnel of the bullion depository. This fortress that is almost impossible for outsiders to enter may well just be a storage room for these financial groups. If the gold inside is indeed intact and there is not a single cent worth missing, Why then is the inspection being refused, especially in the current situation of the United States, which is facing an unprecedented trust crisis, and its national debt has reached as high as $36.40 trillion? Although the gold stored in Fort Knox is just the tip of the iceberg compared to this debt, if the outside world could see the actual, full amount of gold in kind, it would surely enhance people's trust in the United States, and it would also make it easier for U.S. Treasury bonds to find buyers. However, the U.S. Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve are reluctant to do so. So, what exactly are they worried or afraid of? Let's think about it in reverse. If Trump had really taken Musk into the bullion depository during his term of office, what would be waiting for them? This is the end of today's video. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you all for your support.